JLX is my artist signature, but you can call me Jenny Links. My desk is never clean. I've got two, and they're constantly covered with whatever project I am working on. I've gotten into the habit of just recording everything that I do, no matter how big or small, but not everything that I work on would make a good video, at least not standalone videos, so here's a couple of them all grouped together. What do you say we call this compilation Mini Project Speedrun? Up first is a short embroidery project that I had. I had been trying to figure out how to use these coloring books that people just got at me for some reason, so I should find a way to use them, but I don't really do a whole lot of coloring books anymore, at least not really. I've got far too much of my own artwork that isn't colored that I could color. So while I was looking at the simple shapes and graphics, I thought to myself, these would make a great embroidery project. They're simple, you just fill with colored thread, they're small, and they would make great patches. So that's how I ended up doing this embroidery project. It was mostly just me testing out to see if this would be something to continue doing with these coloring books, or if it was even viable, which is why I used these embroidery hoops. These are the kind that you're not supposed to take the embroidered piece out of when you're done. You're just supposed to leave it in the hoop forever. And since this was just a test project and I didn't really have anything to put in these embroidery hoops, like nothing reserved, could lament that I didn't have anything reserved, but I'm not experienced enough with embroidery yet to have designs reserved for embroidery hoops like this, so I just was like, whatever. I'm also thinking of this project as kind of like a touchstone or like a key point in time that I can refer back to as I, continue to practice and get better and improve. That way I know how far I've come, so I know how much further I have to go for my end goal. I just used a small hand iron on the lowest setting to crease the fabric back after trimming it down, and then cutting a small piece of scrap fabric, gluing over it, and trimming it down as well. I think the Lucky Cat came out cuter, but I like them both. Second project. I got commissioned by my mom a while back to make these little paw prints for a small gaggle of children that she was teaching. She needed 8 paw prints, and I needed to use some air dry clay before it went bad. In order to make it survive the move, I had to add water to it, and that greatly decreases the shelf life of clay if you add a ton of water to it, which is why it's highly recommended that you don't do that. Instead, you reactivate it with something that's actually meant for that sort of thing. Either way, I just used the watered down clay to fill up the silicone molds and filled in the little air pockets afterwards. Totally viable method, although I am aware that most people just roll a small blob of clay in their hands and then squish that and smoosh it real good into the mold. That is by far the superior method, but like I said, I was trying to use this clay before it went bad. Coat your clay pieces with glue before you prime and paint them. This will prevent your paint and primer from just soaking into the clay and practically doing nothing. I settled on 4 paint jobs for these paw prints: a tabby cat, a orange striped cat, a calico, and a black cat. And then just gave each color scheme 2 respective colors of toe beans, pink and black. When I was done with them, I gave them a matte finish, just a spray matte finish as a sealant, and then went back in with a high gloss Mod Podge on just the toe beans, because a little texture difference or finish difference on your pieces to represent different areas goes a long way. Another pro tip there. All the paw prints that ended up with black toe beans I made into keychains just to make them feel a little more special, and so that way the kids weren't all like, oh, I didn't get a pink toe bean kitty paw, and it's like, nah, but yours is cool too because you got a keychain. It just seemed more fair in my head. Project number 3. I wanted to try that trend of mixing paint with something else to change the consistency and texture, but I didn't have any blank canvases at the time, so this reclaimed canvas that was donated to me by the artist who did it didn't want to keep it like at all. They wanted it covered with something else, so that's what I used. But here's real quick how you reclaim a canvas and prepare it for a new painting on top. First thing you want to do is you want to sand down any big paint globs that are on it, especially if it was acrylic paint that was on it before. After that, wipe it down, get rid of all the dust, and go in with your gesso using a crisscrossy motion to apply it. You want these streaks to actually be kind of heavy at this point because you're trying to give a different texture since you won't have the texture of the canvas anymore. Something else for your paintbrushes to grab onto when you're, putting your paint on the canvas. 2 to 3 coats of gesso usually does the trick in fully covering a painting to make it opaque again, sanding between each coat, but I didn't bother with that since this painting was going to be darker and pretty thick. As for the topic of the painting itself, I did a bluish green tealy kind of underpainting just to have a nice solid color to work with on top, because I knew what I would be putting on top would be pretty opaque just because it was going to be a thicker consistency, so I wasn't too worried about the underpainting showing through. As for the topic of the painting, I chose sunflowers because I wanted to try using my palette knife to do the petals instead of trying to find my round paintbrush. The technique worked pretty well. The thicker consistency definitely helped with the illusion of the petals, but at the same time, what I used to make the paint thicker was potato starch, and I think that was too fine of a medium to make thicker paint with to be viable because it cracked like super badly. I personally didn't mind the cracked finish too much, and neither did the person who ended up taking this painting off my hands. Last project. I don't have any reveal pictures or like reveal shots for these, but basically I was commissioned to give a more realistic paint job to a bunch of doll shoes and a couple of accessories. I stuck mostly to a neutral color palette of white, gray, or black with a couple picked out accent colors depending on what shoe it was, but prominently using green as my accent color because that is the favorite color of the commissioner. Any shoes that I ended up using a metallic paint on had a undercolor of either gray to go under silver or a light yellow to go under the gold, just so that way things would show up better without losing any of the molded or sculpted texture underneath. These are pretty small, so layers of thin paint was the key, keeping the beautiful sculpting underneath of the items. And this has been Mini Project Speedrun. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the other things that fill my time that aren't always posted. But if you want to see more things like this, maybe I'll have a place to start posting behind the scenes content and smaller projects soon. So keep your eyes out for that.